Carolina.
Tonight, the newly narrowed field will meet for debate in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with perhaps the last chance for the non-Romney vote to unite or allow the frontrunner to ride on to the nomination. Let's go to our political panel right now. With us from Washington, MSNBC political analyst, former DNC communications director Karen Finney, and David Drucker, staff writer for Roll Call. It's great to see both of you. Karen, I want to start with you because some have described Jon Huntsman as a media mirage all along. So how much does his exit mean to Romney and the Republican race? Not only his exit, but his endorsement to Romney.
Not much, to be honest, and I'm sorry to say that to Mr. Huntsman and his hard work. You know, look, it's not necessarily news that he would likely endorse Mitt Romney. It's kind of a nice little thing for Mitt Romney to have going into tonight's debate. Probably not going to make much difference, frankly, when it comes to the South Carolina primary, but it does, as others have said, add to this air of inevitability that this is the guy that we gotta, you know, suck it up and get on board with because he's our best shot to beat Barack Obama. I think that's the message you're going to try to hear, and over, you know, the protestations of Mr. Santorum and Newt Gingrich, who will never know when to get out.
All right, so today during the 11 o'clock hour, during my other hour on this network, we watched Huntsman go all nicey nice, David, basically taking back a lot of the toxic remarks that he has given in the past to all the candidates, but especially to Mitt Romney, saying that they need to cease all of the attacks. But listen to what he had to say for Mitt Romney once upon a time.
Mitt Romney, in your view, cannot be President Obama.
I think when you're on too many sides of the issues of the day, when you don't have that core, when there's that element of trust out there, I think that becomes a problem, and I think it makes you unelectable against Barack Obama.
So just back in November, we have it right there. So Mitt was unelectable. David, now he's the candidate to beat Obama. So can Jon Huntsman really be the person out there as a surrogate to make that case?
Sure he can in the right audience. And don't forget, this happens all the time in every presidential race.
Right.
In 1980, George Herbert Walker Bush called Reagan's economic plan voodoo economics, ended up on the ticket and a great Reagan disciple. In 2008, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton went at each other. It was one of the toughest primaries a lot of us had ever seen, and they made up and made nice at the end of it. There was a very nice, easy convention in Denver later that year. So I think that it's true that it seems funny to us today that you're going to have somebody bashing somebody one day and 5 minutes later supporting them, but in a couple of days all is forgotten, and this happens every time.
Nothing like frenemies in politics. So Karen, we heard Rick Santorum earlier say that Huntsman endorsement that he's giving is basically irrelevant to his own cause, and rallying the evangelical, the social conservative base is really what he's after. So is that still Romney's biggest challenge in South Carolina, trying to break through that way?
You know, I don't think that he needs to, because the expectations for his performance among evangelicals is so low, and frankly, I think whether Rick Santorum likes it or not, Romney actually clearly has the momentum. You know, I had a conversation several months ago with Reverend Jeffress, who was the one who had introduced Rick Perry and had horrible things to say about Mormonism, and he admitted that if it came down to a Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama, he could get behind Mitt Romney and the Mormons. So I think going into South Carolina, this is kind of a last-ditch effort on Santorum's part message-wise, but I don't think it's going to make a big deal to the inevitability.
David, when we take into account the Tea Party in South Carolina, because we know that faction exists within the state itself, but they've been pretty sour on Mitt, not just in South Carolina, but around the South, the Tea Party in general. So if he wins in South Carolina, does it signal the co-opting of the Tea Party insurgency by the Republican establishment?
No, not at all. I think part of the problem is Tea Party conservatives have not found a candidate that they can rally around. Both Newt Gingrich and Rick Santorum have major problems when it comes to the Tea Party. These are 1990s Republicans that believe in a much heavier hand of government and a different brand of conservatism than does the Tea Party, and that's why they haven't been able to rally around these other candidates. And I think that even Tea Party Republicans are going to be focused on Barack Obama and beating him, and there's an element of Mitt Romney's business record and desire to push, you know, free market capitalism that will appeal actually to, you know, Tea Tea Party conservatives that would have preferred a more perfect candidate.
Karen, I want to go ahead real quickly.
I was going to make one quick point about the Tea Party. I think this also shows how overblown the whole Tea Party movement has been from the beginning. Why did they win? Because it was a very small portion of the electorate that they were, whether you're talking about House races or in the Senate primary races. When you're talking about a national election and a national campaign and a larger, even slice of the Republican electorate, they don't have as much power as I think people thought.
Well, they helped shoe in Nikki Haley in South Carolina. She's thrown her endorsement behind Mitt Romney, and now the Tea Party is angry with her because of that. And maybe she's going to be, voted out of office when she's, running again. But Karen, I do want to talk to you though about Rick Perry. Some controversial remarks over the weekend about the picture of U.S. Marines urinating on Taliban corpses. Obviously, this could be something that comes up this evening, talking about what this means to international diplomacy and how the GOP hopefuls will respond. But take a listen to what Perry had to say.
Obviously, 18, 19-year-old kids make stupid mistakes all too often, and that's what's occurred here. What's really disturbing to me is just kind of the over-the-top rhetoric from this administration and their disdain for the military, it appears, whether it's the Secretary of State or whether it's the Secretary of Defense. I mean, these kids made a mistake. There's not any doubt about it. Shouldn't have done it. It's bad. But to call it a criminal act, I think is over the top.
We have this, Perry saying the administration is disrespecting the military to condemn the act. Military leaders themselves, they've condemned it. So, Karen, what's your reaction to this? And obviously, it's a big mistake, but we can't downplay it.
Well, absolutely. And look, hearing Perry's reaction just shows how irrelevant he really is to the conversation and how little he understands about foreign policy. Remember what we went through last year around the potential for the Koran building, or was it 2 years ago? I mean, you had very senior people in the military, not just in the civilian leadership of this country, talking about the damage that would do. And I think when you see an image like that, given our foreign policy objectives, that does damage. And as John Saltz pointed out, it does damage to our soldiers who are still there on the ground, who would never engage in that kind of behavior. So it just shows that Rick Perry, I mean, clearly he's trying to cater to that sector of the electorate, the vote in South Carolina, but has no understanding about how the world really works.
Finally, David, I want to talk to you about Ron Paul. He's back in South Carolina after a 3-day break. Is he the guy that nobody's, talking about, really the rival to Mitt Romney when we're talking about South Carolina? He did come in second in New Hampshire. Now there are a lot of people that, may have wanted to throw their support behind Huntsman that don't want to get behind Romney. Do you think that they'll go behind Paul?
Well, they might. Look, John Huntsman didn't have enough support to really matter at the end of the day. The benefit of him endorsing Romney was that he didn't endorse somebody else and create a negative story for Romney. As far as Ron Paul, it's an interesting story to watch because clearly he has a lot more support and his ideas have a lot more support than they did 4 years ago, and you cannot discount him when you consistently come in a strong second, win over 20% of a particular state. It's making a statement. I think the reason we tend to forget about him when we look at this big picture is because I think it's very hard to picture him winning the Republican nomination given his views on foreign policy and national defense, and that's why Republicans keep looking for an alternative, or at least have kept looking for an alternative to Mitt Romney and have never jumped over to Ron Paul as that alternative.
Karen Finney, David Drucker, great to see you both today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, so coming up on this MLK Day, the president of the NAACP